Alright, this is probably one of the best video I likely would have ever done on YouTube. Okay, so now in this video, I'm gonna have a full breakdown on how an advisor went from grinding roadshows to 160k of income per year, right? And I break down all of these things, and this video is going to show the step by step of how we help this particular advisor. Okay, and so just for context, just so that you know it's real, basically this advisor's name is called Joel, and he was basically saying that he managed to clear his MDRT over here for the year, yada, and he was spending May, June traveling, back on track, right? Started to do investment and start his own business, so on and so forth, right? Then of course, when I was DMing him, of course, he was also saying that he did about 150k. I asked him, is it 150? And he says about 160. Okay, and of course, he went for his MDRT convention for his very first time back then. Okay, and so in this video, I'm going to break down the step by step of how this advisor went from grinding out roadshows almost every day, right, for the last 6 years, to earning 160k income per year without roadshows, right? He basically stopped roadshows. Okay, and so this is the first time I'm doing such a detailed breakdown, and I hope this will be helpful for you. Okay, so let's dive into it. All right, so for some background, okay, so this guy's name is called Joel. He's an amazing fella, right? He's from GE, and like I mentioned, his main prospecting method a lot to do with roadshows. Okay, and so for context as well, he's about 6 years in the business. He has about like 200 clients at this point in time, or at that point in time when he first joined us, and 90% of it came from roadshows, right? So he didn't do too much warm market because he didn't feel comfortable at a point in time, and so he took the route of going the traditional way of like doing roadshows, cold calling, but mainly roadshows. Okay, and so after 6 years, he has not done MDRT before. He averages about like 30k FYC each every single year, and with his existing clients, right, he mainly only go back to them for just cross sales and upsells only, right? And so that's for the background. And so there are a few problems that he was facing, right? So number one is that he was very jaded from long-term roadshows. Now, and here's a big thing, right? Which is, a lot of advisors when they first start off, they kind of like can really grind it out, like the roadshows, maybe the first 6 months, first 1 year, maybe even 2 years, right? And gotten them certain form of results. The challenge here is that it is never a sustainable method, right, for you to do roadshows for like 5 years or 6 years. Like, I've not seen anyone, right, at least in my last like almost a decade of experience, someone doing roadshows for the full 10 years. Okay, like completely doing roadshows every single day for full 10 years. It's not sustainable, right? Even if it gets you the results, you're gonna get jaded, you're gonna get exhausted from physically standing there, and more importantly, sometimes you start questioning yourself, like, are you a financial advisor, or are you just like an insurance agent at a roadshow just trying to sell some products, right? And so that was like really Joel, right? Like, he's a great guy, right? It's just that he had no choice. He didn't know any better, and he had to do like roadshows, and he got jaded. Okay, and also he didn't have certainty that what he was doing was replicable, meaning to say that more often than not, it was a very hit or miss kind of like sales process, right? It's sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and he was in this rut, right? And he also lacking the systems to really replicate and make it sustainable in the long run, right? And more importantly is that because I think a lot of advisors just like Joel, always go for courses. You always want to upskill and upgrade yourself. But I found it, like, especially based on the courses and everything else that he went, it find it hard to implement, right? Either because, two things. Number one, the sharings and everything else were a little bit too generic, a little bit too general, too big picture, right? There's no step-by-step actionables. Or, even when he went for courses, it was step-by-step, but there wasn't any accountability, there wasn't any support when it comes to the implementation, right? And so these were problems that he was facing, right? And his goals were very simple, right? I remember he was on call with me, and his goals was just like, okay, Ben, I just want to hit my MDRT, right? And also if I can just do like, have 8 to 10k a month in income, and more importantly, able to sustain the business, right? Because he didn't want to leave the industry. He enjoys really kind of like the work and the flexibility, etc., right? But it's just that the current business model that he has is just not sustainable. Okay, and so those were basically his goals. Now, I laid out exactly how his business model is like, right, when it comes to his roadshows. So clearly, he started off, or mainly his main prospecting method is roadshows, and more often than not, he tried to do like a 1 appointment close, right? And so this is typically where, and this is just the nature of roadshows, right, where you sit down a person, right? There's a puller, the person sits down, and what you really have no choice but to do more often than not, it's or being taught to do is to really sit the person down and within 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, try to get a closure, right? And the rationale for that in the old way of doing things is that you want to sit them down and close on the spot because, again, roadshows, first of all, cost money, right? Like you need to pay for the roadshows, especially if your location of the roadshows are a little bit more prime, the prices are a lot more premium as well. So you want to always make sure that you sit down and then you close so that at least you can cover your costs, so to speak, right? And so that was basically what most people are taught, and that's what Joel did as well. And did one appointment close. He asked for referrals, and then once obviously the prospect became a client, and then he just do annual reviews and then cross sell upsell. That's basically about it, right? And when he couldn't close on the spot, then he tried to do like endless follow-ups, which resulted in a lot of ghosting and MIA, right? And this is really the nature of not just home market, but also in relation to roadshows, okay? Because like these people have no idea who the hell are you, and more importantly, they also get interrupted, right? Like it's not as if they plan to walk by the MRT and actually sit down on a roadshow. They just get put away, and so that's basically the business model. Now, that being said, there's a few problems with this business model and at least the process, right? And I'm going to lay it out for you. So, at least for Joel, right? Like this happened. So, first of all, right, when it comes to roadshows, we already established that, first of all, he's exhausted and jaded. Okay, like this is very, really, really very tiring. And it just lacks purpose doing that. And then number two, right, so there's a roadshows problem. Number two is that even though he did close and he do close from a one appointment closing structure, the challenge here is that usually the closing ratio is a lot smaller, and more importantly, or scarily, is that the case size isn't as big. So generally speaking, it's like you would either close like a personal accident plan, a cash shield, a hospital plan, right, or some kind of rider, right? And maybe if you are kind of like decent, you'll probably close like a savings plan, so to speak, right? $100 a month, $200 a month. Now the thing here about this one appointment close and trying to close within that kind of like setting is that your deal and case sizes, right? If you ever close in the one appointment at the roadshow, is that it's not going to be that big, right? It's generally, usually it's not going to be like super huge or anything, right? Because think about it, there's no trust, right? Number one, and then number two, the time frame is so short, right? And then number three, the frame of mind for the prospects, right, isn't the most prime or optimized, right? Because again, this particular prospect walking by has no intention of sitting down at the roadshow and buying anything and taking like, I don't know, $1,000 or $5,000 out. And so based on all these circumstances when it comes to roadshows, the odds are stacked against you. And so again, right, like even when you close, and the same thing happens with like Joel, it's like the case sizes aren't really the biggest. You close, maybe every time you close, maybe it's like $100, $150, or even $200, kind of like commission, so to speak. Okay, and so that was a second challenge. And then obviously when he asked for referrals, there's also low referral rate. And it goes without saying, right, that, and I think this is an important point, which is a lot of times I think advisors are really under the misconception that, okay, just because someone buys from, they believe that because someone buys from them, then the client now is willing to trust and willing to refer. That's not necessarily true, right? Because at the end of the day, when you talk about like the advisor and the prospect, like that transaction happened between both of you. So the trust is between both of you to a certain degree. The challenge here is that when you want the prospect or client to refer someone, the trust required is a lot higher, right? Because now they have to stake their entire name, reputation, and brand, at risk for someone whom they just kind of know maybe 45 minutes ago, right? And so obviously referral rates are not the highest. And a lot of times also that these clients tend to be a little bit more transactional. And it's not necessarily because like the clients or the prospect themselves are like that. Some of them are for sure. Challenge here is that because when you go for one appointment close and you try to close within a short time frame, it's usually more product selling. Sure, you can do some concept here and there, right? But like at the end of the day, it's still a little bit more like product related, because you're trying to close at that point in time, right? And so that's kind of like the challenges here. Now, of course, when it comes to existing clients, for him particularly, like of course, we go back to do cross-sell, upsells, etc. And the truth here is that like cross-sell, upsells are part and parcel of the business, right? I think that is something you should be doing, that any advisors should be doing. Problem here is that if you only, right, go back to your existing clients, only just cross-sell, upsell, you don't build relationship, you don't do or put in, you install like a client nurturing system where you really provide more value, equity, social equity, and everything else, there'll be this thing called a review fatigue, right? And essentially, a review fatigue basically means that if because if you keep doing this like cross-sell upsells only over the period of time, like over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, a review fatigue basically means that your prospect or your clients, every time they see your text, they'll be like, oh, this person is trying to sell me something, right? Or like every meeting associated with you equates to buying something from you again, right? Or getting referrals or have to ask for referrals for you, right? And so what happens here is that people tend to get a little bit more, your clients will get a bit more reluctant, they will try not to like meet you as much, and essentially it makes things a lot harder as well. And the reason for why like a lot of advisors when it comes to do roadshows, it happened this way, right? Is because the nature of roadshow makes one to think in very instant RI terms, and the same thing with Joel, right? Which is even if you want to build relationships, it's not that he doesn't believe in relationship, right? He wants to build relationship. It's just that from a business standpoint, he couldn't see any method or any picture of like an instant ROI, so to speak, right? Because it's like, okay, I'm spending all my time roadshows, I'm trying to survive and make a living, but then now if I'm going to build relationship with clients, I might have a social or a catch up, but then I might not even get or earn anything else, right? And so that's kind of like the key challenges when it comes to business model. And of course, when the deal doesn't close, there's a lot of ineffective follow-ups, right? And I think a lot of times advisors do follow-ups in a way that is the methods of follow-up is not relevant in this day and age, right? It's always the, hey, what do you got to think about? Hello, can you let me know? Yada yada. So it comes to a point where it gets a little bit annoying and like pestering the prospect, right? And so that's basically the challenge with the business model for Joel, right? And I would say that most advisors, when they do roadshows, these are usually like the problems as well. Okay, and so these are the key changes I've noticed and observed. So what did we do, right? And so obviously, like he's okay, right? He's still earning money, but he's not in the most ideal desired state. And so this is what we do to help him. So first of all, what we did was we restructured the sales process, right? And again, so he's initially is basically just doing one appointment close, and like I mentioned, sometimes like it might get into a little bit more aggressive selling. Case sizes are small, right? And what happens here is that you have to depend a lot on volume, right? Like you are volume dependent, right? And so imagine that every time you close a case is like a $200 FYC. Imagine you want to earn 2,000, right? First year commissions in a month. Sure, maybe you only need to close 10. The challenge here is that don't forget, you still have costs to pay for the roadshows, that's number one. And you're literally spending time and energy, 8-10 hours doing roadshows. Okay, and so that's number one. Now, the second thing is, let's say you want to scale to like 4, 5, 6,000 FYC in a month. Okay, and let's say 6,000. And 6,000 divided by 200, you are looking at like what? 30? Right, you got to close like 30 cases. And so again, you are volume dependent. Okay, and a lot of times there's also a high free look, right? Because sometimes the prospect just like, okay, you know what? Maybe they just go ahead with it, they just apply, but they might not pay, or they apply and pay, then they free look later, right? Or sometimes you just want to like get out of the way, right? They just want you to like stop pestering them, so they just agree, and maybe they might find some sense in buying. However, more often than not, they will have buyer's remorse, right? Because again, like there's no trust, they are not in the right frame of mind, and it's just so hard, right, to do it. Okay, and so that's basically that. So we restructured the sales process, and the reason for that is also because like he's already doing a lot of roadshows. The first thing that comes to my mind or to our mind, our process is like, okay, we might not want to completely stop roadshows like immediately, right? Because if this is his main method of doing roadshows or getting prospects and appointments, stopping it immediately would literally lose him like all the appointments and basically the money making machine, so to speak, right? The business model. Obviously, we want to transit away later, but that's more of a later stage. So we have to make sure that, okay, based on his current business model and the process over here, what are the things that if we work on, right, will give him more money or give him more quick wins, right, or low hanging fruits. And clearly, it's definitely about to do with the appointments. And so we work on a one appointment close to a two appointment close. Okay, and so we use our methodology. We call this reverse selling, right? And so it's reverse selling, at least for us, is a 7-step process that helps you to eliminate objections before the close and put the prospect in the buying state. And so we split out in 2 appointments using this methodology. And the reason for that is also very simple, which is we want to make sure that, okay, during the first appointment, during a sit down, right, that 15, 20, 30 minutes, right, how much can we give as much value as we can? Can we do more concepts? Can we ask the right questions to allow them to realize that they might have a problem, right? And again, if you found yourself asking questions to help the prospect realize that they have a problem, this is also what we call as opening. Okay, and so asking the right questions, providing value, etc., right? And the reason for that is also because we want to make sure that in the second appointment they are in a better state, because again, right, like, you don't if you want to try to close in the first appointment, again, you have all these problems, right? Our goal is how can we basically have bigger case sizes, higher closing ratio, and then more trust and better clients, right? And so we split into 2 appointment close, and the second one is usually a closing. The first one is just really concept, which means to say that if you look at this structure, the business model, what it means here is that roadshows is purely just a lead gen, right? Roadshows is purely just a lead gen. You have a 15-20 minutes value-based conversation, and then from there you lead into closing. Okay, so one of the things that I want to point out over here is the reason why I do this is also very simple, because when you are able to, so what do you think most advisors do when it comes to roadshows? They'll do basically the first one appointment close. Okay, now and then roadshows get a bad reputation, and what happens here is that the consumers, your prospects, already perceive you to just be like another advisor when you're doing roadshows, right? They already know more or less how your structure is going to be like. And so the thing is that when they end up sitting down with you, and when you don't actually pitch them, you don't like hard sell or assertively pitch them, so on and so forth, it breaks their pattern in their head. They'll be like, okay, this is interesting. This fella didn't try to sell me. It's like, right? They might not trust you completely, but it breaks their pattern. Because if they already perceive you to be just like an FA at roadshows trying to sell them stuff, a kacang putih $200 cashew, it's like they will have already the default defense mechanism of saying, no, it's okay, I've got an advisor already, maybe not now, right? But when you break the pattern, they do not know exactly how to respond. And so what this means is that when you do things differently, and this is why we do it, you put yourself in a position where people perceive you to be different, right, from other advisors in the market, right? And that's basically the main important thing, right? Because when you are different from other people, it makes people more receptive to wondering what have you got to say, or how different are you, right? So it tricks them, right? So, and that's basically the reason why I do it as well. Okay, and so we do a 2 appointment close. Okay, and so of course, like Joel, he said that, like, after he did this, he didn't believe us at first, but once he started to do it, he was like, okay, finally tweak my sales process, and clients feel like having a process as well. Being educated, so there's a little more value driven, right? Makes them feel they want to refer more. And basically, eventually he had a client that wants to speak to basically he got a referral, right? After a sales appointment, and also cover entire company through our travel insurance. Okay, and so we also use that. So Joe also used our 500K presentation. It's called 500K. You've probably seen this a little bit more throughout the entire video, but it's called 500K because it's basically a presentation, a value-based presentation that earned nearly $500,000 when I was 22, 23 years old as a financial advisor back then, right, as a student, right? And so we have worked pretty much for like all the companies that we have worked with when it comes to advisors as well. Okay, so he used it and then closed investment link, and he was saying like works like butter, right? So on and so forth, right? And then after that, he also did the 500K ANH as well, right? So that's basically the first thing we did to really restructure his sales process, right? So that's number 1. Now, after he done it, then we go on to step number 2, right? Because the second problem that we realized is that, yes, he has existing clients, but then he didn't have a nurturing system. He didn't have a system that nurtures, keep the clients warm, and provide a lot more value beyond the first transaction, right? And so basically he only did annual reviews, and then there was what we call review fatigue. There is like clients start to fall out and drop out, and there's unreal CRM clients, right? And so what this means here is that you could have 200 people on your CRM in your Great Eastern portal or whatever, or your insurance company portal, but real clients that can actually go back to maybe only 120, right? Because what happens to the other 80? They're still with you in an administrative standpoint because they still have the policies bought from you, but they no longer see you as their advisor. And so what happens is they tend to fall out, they tend to drop out, and then they try to go talk to other advisors and buy from them. Okay, and so that's what usually happens. You also have low referral rate and stuck in acquisition, right? So think about it, right? Because your pool of clients, think of it as a bucket. Okay, and so in the bucket there's these 200 clients, but then there's always a hole. And so the hole is so big, or is getting bigger, so the clients keep falling out, and because they keep dropping out, you have no choice but to keep acquiring clients to fill out the bucket again, right? And so this is the reason why, like, after 10 years, there are advisors who still care a lot about client acquisition because they didn't take care of the pool of clients that they had when they acquired them in the past. Okay, and so this is the reason why you also want to make sure that, okay, clients are taken care of so that you can actually reach maybe that 300 to 500 clientele, which they all stick with you as much as possible. And this group of people always buy from you, refer people to you if you do take care of them as well, right? And so that was what happened, like with Joel. He only did annual reviews, and these are the problems that he had. And so we installed what we call a client nurturing system, where rather than only just doing annual reviews and doing cross-sell upsells, we want to do that. On top of that as well, we also put in what I call social relationship or social equity, right? Or relational equity, so to speak, right? Relational equity. So we have a client, we have basically a system of knowing how to go back to them, what to do and say during the appointments when you go back to them, that will provide value and equally at the same time allow us, right, to transit into a cross-sell and upsell and even getting referrals later on also. Okay, then obviously there are also other things like having certain technology platforms, using certain broadcasts, etc., certain content that we usually send out to them, really keep them warm, right, and to really install what I call a client nurturing system. Okay, and so that's for this part. And like look at what Joel said, right? And then he tried it, and then he was like, hey, been trying to build out my existing clients, close another investment link plan, right? Last night, existing client catch up. By the way, converted the business appointment for review, right? Share 500K again using our concept branding, using a sales process, and then close another like ILP, right? And close 3 ILP in this week, just purely from catch up and by the way, okay, which is like our methodology here. So this is crazy, right? Because again, you already have existing clients, and a lot of times, and fun fact, a lot of times, your clients, it's not that clients don't want to buy from you or they don't have a budget. It's usually one of two reasons that they don't do it, right? Number one, you do not know how to exactly open them up or value add to them, right? To help them see or realize the problem that they want to solve. So it's a sales process problem, which is why we solve it just now. And on number two, more often than not, it's because your clients have money, they do have contacts, they might or would vouch for you. Problem is that they don't want to feel that every time you go back to them, it's like you only just want to sell them, right? People don't want to feel that way. They have no problem taking money out if you make them feel special, if they make them feel like you care for them beyond just the sale. And when you know how to do these two things, right, having an entire system to really build goodwill, build what we call social equity in the entire clientele base, then this will allow you to have more passive referrals, more testimonials, and obviously when you go back to cross-sell, upsell, it's way easier as well. Okay, and so that's step number 2. Now, step number 3. Then and only then. So think about it, right? Like, we want to transit him away from roadshows, but I realized that we didn't want to do it immediately, so we did this restructuring of sales process. We did the relational equity with clients, so this helped me earn a lot more money. Then and only then, we deploy our new age prospecting, right? And so the old way of doing things is that he was doing roadshows and he was like exhausted from doing 3 to 5 roadshow shifts per week. It was obviously unsustainable, and there was a lot of high costing, right? Roadshow locations, free games, and you still got to pay the puller, okay? And so that's that. So what we did was that we got him to use one of our methods, what we call valuation prospecting, where essentially we use social media platforms, right, not only to post content, but also to reach out in a way, right, that's not assertive to our semi-warm market or even cold market as well, right? And it was a big... So at the point in time, Joel had a couple of choices, right? You could do warm, semi-warm, or do cold, and ideally you want to do both when it comes to like cold prospecting on LinkedIn, IG, or even Facebook. The thing here was that we got him to do Instagram first because he hasn't really went back to warm anyway, right? He didn't really started there. His entire business model was on cold and roadshows, right? And so we found that there's a big opportunity when it comes to the warm or semi-warm market, and we wanted to really, again, right, help him to make the easiest transition as we can. From, okay, doing warm, right? And then after that, getting people who kind of know him. And it's actually a lot easier also because sometimes, like when you are about 5, 6, 7, 8 years in the business, your semi-warm market tend to trust you a little bit more, right? Because they know that you're able to sustain yourself in the business and you have to stay long in the business anyway. Okay, and so that's what we did of getting him doing IG, etc., and then getting him high quality appointments. Okay, and so this was obviously one of like the screenshots I had. He was having a conversation, which we taught him an exact structure of how to have conversations, yada yada. And it was like, he started posting a little bit, right? And then people actually reach out to him, right? Which is crazy. Yeah, right? I follow Kelly advice and post at, various document my day, signing of people DM me. And we also taught him an exact structure of how to have that conversation. And then after that, we help him, and then basically he get an appointment from there, right? And so that's basically for step number 3. Okay, and so essentially these are basically the 3 steps that we've done, to help him restructure his entire business model and help him way more money. And later on, this is where probably 6 months later, he completely stopped roadshows. Okay, and so let me share with you how his business model looked after, he transited. Okay, so his roadshow was completely he was at a point in time he was still kind of doing it, but later on he completely stopped it already, right? And so instead of doing roadshows, what happened was we added in Instagram. So that's number 1, right? We added in Instagram, and so that was, which is what I shared just now. And then again we had break up into 2 appointments, right? Value appointment and closing appointment. Okay, and then of course show up rate, everything else is all here as well. And so again, you can see, he was like, hey, close an ILP after painting a picture, yada yada. And see this, right? Managed to rehearse and do my 500K presentation at roadshows. And prospect said she learned a lot of presentation, works wonders. And this is exactly the point that we are making, right? Which is, how can we give them as much value as we can during the roadshow when they sit down, so that you get an appointment later on and you're able to get them to show up. A lot of people are very scared, and this is something I want to make clear. I think a lot of advisors are very scared that if you have a 2 appointment, the prospect might not show up for the second appointment. Now, is that true? Of course. But here's the question that you want to ask better, which is, why do you think they do not want to show up for the second appointment? It's either one of 2 reasons. Number 1, they don't see the value in having a second appointment with you, right? Or they're not sure of basically what you're going to do with the second appointment. Or the second reason, which is more likely, which is that your first appointment, you didn't provide a value or help this person realize the problem and pain enough for them to want to show up for the second appointment. And so again, imagine you go for first appointment, you try to sell them stuff, so on and so forth. Why would they want to show up for a second appointment? Why would they? Probably what? It doesn't even make sense they should show up for a second appointment, especially how you sell in the first one, right? And so again, however, when you're able to have a value appointment and really educate, provide a lot of concepts and help them to realize the problem and pain, getting them to show up for a second appointment is way easier, right? Typically over here, we at least have a 90% show up rate, right? And usually because we've done the concept, we open up better, the case sizes here are way bigger, right? Way bigger. We're talking about at least 1, 2, 3K FYC, first year commissions, right? Depending on what you sell, of course. You know what? It's a lot easier because over here, you might be able to do a lot more policy review. And if you do policy review, you clearly know that it's kind of like a pot of gold or bag of gold, right? Where you know you can restructure certain things. So case sizes generally speaking going to be a lot bigger. You see, the funny thing is that how the hell are you going to do policy review in that 15-20 minutes during roadshows? You probably can't, right? You probably can't. Or even if you take a glance at their policies through the apps, etc., it's not going to do much anyway, right? Because why would they trust you with all these things also? And so essentially this is what we did. With Joel, so this business model is okay, roadshows, we added in Instagram, so you stop roadshows later on, right? So maybe put it over here, dash. Okay, and then you did value appointment, closing appointment, and then of course, if you didn't close, we also taught him how to do leadership-based follow-ups, right? If he didn't close, and so of course, he was saying that, hey, there was this particular prospect client that postponed my appointment MIA, sending a breakup text to which he replied wasn't feeling well, send a hamper, again, right? Leadership-based follow-up. And then subsequently, he was the one that approached me directly to buy another investment plan for his wife, and also referring to his church to give a talk, yada yada, and asking me to review his current portfolio, right? Yeah, and so this is how it should be, right? This is how follow-up should be, right? And so that's basically what we taught Joel, and his business model. He knows exactly how to do that now. And then of course he asked for referrals, etc. Right, then of course became an existing client, and then they do annual reviews, so on and so forth. And then we talk about relational equity building, and so he also started to do that in the steps, right? And so obviously he start closing, and it's crazy, right? Look at this. He was managed to close a 67K RP case investment closing at Christmas. Was just catching up, passing the diaries, calendar, having a good time with client. We are sharing a case study of what I did for a previous client as per the combo catch-ups learned from Ben and Kelly, who the client in. So this is what I mean, right? How do you go back, build a lot of relationship, provide a lot of value, and equally at the same time manage to open up cases, right? So that you always get a quote-unquote and more immediate or instant ROI on your time. Okay, and so client the idea, as a son to me, so can buy his name. Just want to say that as long as don't forget the basics. It's never too old, but it's goal, right? So close between 2 appointments as I prep out the possible scenarios. Again, based off the reverse selling methodology, right? Like what are the different things that we want to say and ask to put a prospect into a buying state. Okay, and so did that, and yeah, and so it's essentially this is a business model right now. Right, and so you compare it to the past, right, which is just like roadshows, one appointment closed, yada yada, so on and so forth. It became like this now, right? You can see that it's more elongated, as we get better referrals, the closing and case size is a lot easier and better also. Okay, and so that's basically his business model, right? And obviously, when we work on further later on, like the company stopped roadshow, he started doing social media, content, etc. Right? So the business model changes, right, along the way. And so this is something to that I think most people don't think about, which is your business model will never ever stay the same, right? And it shouldn't stay the same, right? All business model will eventually transit away from your original one. The ones that you've been doing in the first 1 or 2 years, like usually if you do cold and everything else, like your business model will change. Like you will not stay with cold call, lead gen, telemarketing, or roadshows and everything. It will always change eventually into like either warm, semi-warm, social media, referrals, etc., right? And so that's basically about the business model. Okay, and so of course the fella, right, a lot happier, right? As you can see over here, like this was like 27 May 2024, and then yeah, he was doing like all the things that he wanted to do. And then of course, achievers, this is from G, right, yada yada, right, again, and then of course, enjoying himself, right? I don't know where to see, but looks a pretty nice place, right? And so basically just enjoying himself, and he had a lot more time now, right? Because a lot more time, there's one, and then number two, money to really enjoy the stuff you enjoy. Okay, and so this is a kind of timeline just so they have a idea, because like people always be asking, okay, you know what? Like this is one of the things, right? Which is when you want to change your business model or move away from your current one, it's always a risk and it always seems scary. Okay, it always seems scary because you already know this is somewhat earning you money, and you're afraid that if you change your business model, you're embarking on something newer, and it might or might not work out. And that's always the risk that you have to face and you have to take when you transit your business model. Okay, and so but then at the same time, if you don't change, then if you don't change or transit or take any action, what's going to change for the business model anyway? Probably nothing much, right? And so you're going to get stuck here forever. Okay, and so just for a timeline, right? So based off, and this is the reason why we did like the steps in this manner, because when based on timeline, these are the results. Okay, so within 3 months of joining, he did like 20K FYC. Okay, within 3 months of joining. And for context, right? His previous year before he joined us, he was averaging 30K FYC. So he did 20K FYC within 3 months of joining, achieved his first MDRT, right? And then the following year, I think because he joined us in June that year or something, the following year, he did his second MDRT 2 months earlier, okay? And stopped roadshows completely, having real systems in business because he able to replicate that now. And he also actually started to go out management also, has certainty and peace of mind, and he basically took back 160K in income, and now he has a very sustainable advisory business. In fact, this fella right now is like doing trading, he's building a team, he's enjoying himself, like going with the clients, like, and he has so much time for himself to take care of his mom as well. Like, it's just a beautiful thing, a beautiful place to be. Okay, and so this is essentially, right, how we actually do it and how we'll break down based on the problems and the background that a particular advisor have, based on their situation, and how we do the transition, so that you're always making sure that you're earning money and also transiting away from business model that is not aligned with you anymore. Okay, and so that's basically for Joel, and how we really, again, showing the exact step-by-step process on how we help someone who really grinding out roadshows to 160K income per year. I'm pretty sure he earns way more now, and he's no longer doing any form of roadshows also. Okay, and so hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed this video and you think it's helpful, just give a like, subscribe to this video, and share with your friends and colleagues so that they can also have a better business model. Cheers.